I'd like to welcome you all and thank you for coming here. Um, is there anybody from the public who wishes to comment? Yes, please.
Jason Tron.
Here.
Julie Simpson.
Here.
Jeff Bard.
Here.
Robin Cleek. Here. Wes Poland. Here. Matt Jacobs.
Here.
Sonali Patel.
Here. The first thing is our staff recognition for our teachers and administrators who received tenure.
Lynn?
I don't know if this one's on. I'll try this. I think this is one of our most exciting nights of our year as we recognize our teachers that received tenure this evening and a few administrators as well. I think for our administrative team, as well as I know Dr. Maturo, we have a special place in our heart for this group of teachers. I know that I hired every single one of them, and I know that Dr. Maturo has mentored every single one of them for the past 4 years, and we're incredibly excited to recognize them tonight. So we're going to start with Aspen School, and I'm going to ask Bill Fredrickson to come up. And from Aspen, we have Hemi Lee, who also shares with Elementary South. Where's Hemi? Come on up.
Don't be shy now.
Kelly Loiben. Wait over here. We'll do it all at one time, okay? So you're not up down. And Jamie Medberry. We're going to have everybody wait up here, and then we'll shake hands at the end. Next, we have from Elementary South, Jill Martin and Christy Hunter. Tonight, we'd like to recognize with tenure Victoria Allen. Emily Halbert. And Jackie Weinstein. And next from Elementary North, we have Katie Wagner. And from Elementary North, we have Debbie Dubin. Fernando Figueroa. And Samantha McCabe. And from Townline Elementary, Dr. Kiefer. From Townline, we have Pam Couris. Shaylee Patel. And Larry Watts. Next, from our School of Dual Language, Dr. Tomei. And from the Dual Language School, we have Laura Rodriguez. And Angelica Velasquez. Next, from Middle School South, we have Rob Natal and Jamie Kahn. Middle School South, we have Sarah Anderson, who also serves some of our other elementary schools. Ellen Eider. Laura Guess is at a track meet? At a track meet, but we'll recognize her as well. Samantha May. Charles Naffier. And Anna Prahl. And next from Middle School North, we have Robert Collins and Charity Trowbridge. From Middle School North, we have Allie Athens. Alex Lowe. Jeff Mazuka. Lori Rockoff. And Lisa Vates. And from Lincoln School, we have Renee Alberg. Amanda Belford. And Patricia Fika.
We also have a couple of administrators that have been here. You see, it's a big class from 6 years ago. So I have asked Lisa if she'd do the honors today to help recognize these folks.
Okay. From our district office, our Director of Human Resources, Lynn Barkley. And our principal of Town Line Elementary, Dr. Victoria Kiefer.
That's it. We can go through this way. We'll do the handshakes.
Congratulations.
All right. Thank you, Dr.
Congratulations, Dr.
Am I elected mayor yet?
Everybody outside for the photo. Who's that?
That's Karen.
Karen.
I need to meet you.
Oh, and see, this one is
Christy
so
Hunter
much
walked in and
like,
said,
less abrasive than that one.
73, do your tenure.
I'm good.
I like to sandblast my hands.
That's why I dip them in bleach.
Where did Abe go? He disappeared again.
He just thinks he has freedom to walk wherever he wants to.
I like it.
Abe saying, Abe, you're being paged. Just takes off. Yeah. Would you like fries with that? There were cupcakes back there. We know.
Right. I mean, I'm just curious, but yeah. But that's okay, either way.
Hey, Dad. Dad.
Tom was swimming upstream, finally made it in.
He did.
Not have a seat.
May I have your pick?
Dr. Martin, are you ready? All right. Thank you so much.
Good evening, everyone.
Good
I'm Jill
evening.
Martin, principal at Hawthorne Elementary South. And this is Christy Hunter, assistant principal. And when Lynn Barkley told you that tonight was one of the most exciting nights of the year, that was either because she herself was getting tenure or because Elementary South is presenting tonight. So tonight we're going to present to you on a new initiative this year called the STAR Team. It stands for Students Taking Additional Responsibilities. And our very own 4th and 5th graders will present to
That
you
has to stay
about what
open.
that means.
The back one's
That has to
open?
stay open. Open Meetings Act.
The back one's open?
Take it away,
Doesn't
4th and
matter.
5th graders.
All right.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jill Martin, principal of Hawthorne Elementary South School.
And I'm Christy Hunter, the assistant principal.
Today we're going to tell you about a new initiative here at South, the STAR Team.
STAR stands for Students Taking on Additional Responsibilities.
The STAR Team is a group of 4th and 5th graders who have volunteered their time to take on a leadership role at Elementary South.
The purpose of the team is to give students at our school ownership and feel connected in their learning community.
Research shows that when students have ownership over their school experience, there is a greater commitment and motivation.
When we introduced the team to the children, we had over 100 students volunteer. So we split the responsibilities into 4 teams and then divided each team into 3 trimesters so everyone who wanted to take on additional leadership roles could have an opportunity to do so.
The 4 teams within STAR Team are the Tech Team, the Beautification Team, Rewards and School Spirit, and Growth Mindset Team.
I'm Brody Young on the tech team for the STAR Team program, and I had fun. I liked it because it was a way to calm myself down, and it is a brain break for me from learning. I am Aiden, and I was in tech team. I love tech team because you got to go to Chromebook carts and lock them with all computers in the right places. I helped the school a lot, and that is what tech team is about.
I'm Zaya, and I'm part of the tech team. Some of my responsibilities are plugging in all the computers in any cart, reporting any missing computers in any cart, and helping younger students log in during math testing.
I participated in the beautification of our school. I really enjoyed doing this because I felt like I really helped the school in a lot of ways. I really enjoyed being on this team.
Hi, I'm Tessa, and I was on the beautification team. I really enjoyed it because I got to water the plants with my friends. We also got to think of ideas to make the school better.
Hi, I'm Jonathan, and I'm on the beautification team. This year, we had many jobs, such as watering the garden wall, planting milkweed, and picking up litter.
Hi, I'm Sandra, and I was part of the beautification team. The things that we got to do were watering the garden, picking up litter, and planting a garden in front of the cafeteria. One thing I really liked during my part in beautification was picking up litter because it was helpful to our school.
Hi, my name is Margaret. I was on the beautification team. I liked it because we got to pick up litter and water the plant wall. It was fun because we were able to make the school more clean and less dirty. My name is Jillian, and I'm in the rewards team. What I love most about it is that you get to help out kids with their ribbons. What I love about Hawthorne Elementary South is that kids help other kids that need help. The reason I wanted to do rewards team is because I wanted to make a difference. This is why I love being on the STAR team.
And I was on the growth mindset team. I loved looking at all the beautiful flags we created. Looking at the flags, I could see we put a lot of effort in our flags. I loved all our flags.
been an awesome addition to Elementary South this year. It's given our students opportunities to take leadership roles. They've had a great time doing it. We've come together around themes like growth mindset and kindness, cleaning up our school, keeping our school a beautiful place to be, and we've had a lot of fun while doing it. So, do you have any questions?
I think this is great. So, and great presentation. Thank you. Do the students get to sign up do they just sign up and then they're assigned to a committee, or do they get to pick the one that they want to be on, the group? Like if they want to be in the tech team or?
Yeah, they show us.
Okay.
They put up choices and we.
They pretty much got everything they wanted to do. And then after the first team did it for the first trimester, then they were like, can we come back and do the next one? So we had a lot of kids doing it. Our garden wall is a little overwatered.
But it looks healthy.
It looks awesome.
Yes, it looks great.
It's been a lot of fun, though.
Fun.
you.
Thank
Thank
you so
you.
much.
Thank you.
We'll go to the discussion items, and I'm waiting for Jason is here because he wanted to be here when talked about the kindergarten center with the lamp. So let's start with the kindergarten building construction bid, which has been an ongoing discussion. You guys have received all the materials that were to it, the bids, the memos, everything. And I'd like
Jay Alexander with Lamp Incorporated.
Hi, Jay. And we have Jason Lemke from DLR. So this is the kindergarten building construction bid. We had sent out the documents for bidding. We had the bid in two parts.
Yeah, basically two kind of separate bid dates. It was the same bid release, but just had to split them due to some changes.
Yes, and the result from that is that if we build it right now, we are over by $2.7 almost $1 million.
Correct.
So that is what the result is. So if we go out, we would be up 2.7 of what we don't have. So
And we have a hard budget of 12.
Yes.
When we started the project, and so these gentlemen are here to kind of talk through the bid process, what this means to us, what information we had coming up to this point, what might be some options that for the board to consider as they're going forward. It was a little surprising for everybody, I believe, that they came out this much over. You can always come up or below, but this much is a big difference. So I guess I'll turn it over to you and let you kind of share the bid process and what we're experiencing.
Yeah, so over the last several weeks, on the 5th and the 17th, we collected all the bids for all 23 trade packages. We had a very good turnout, probably about 140 some bids over the 23 trade packages. Just unfortunately, they weren't, down to the budget where we needed them to be. But we also have confidence that we got some good competitive numbers in those bids that we received. So after all the bids were received, we met with all the low contractors, talked through all their bids, made sure they had everything included. Didn't find any issues with any of the low contractors.
I'm sorry, I need to interrupt you for 1 second.
Sorry.
Jeff just said he can't hear anything through the mics, that it's cutting out every time somebody speaks.
Is that turned on there?
Looks like it's on.
Can you try the other mic?
Sorry to interrupt you.
Oh, that's okay.
Thank you.
Maybe try.
That's stuck.
Maybe the portable one.
Try this one.
Is that better?
Jeff, is that better?
Speaking.
Jeff, can you hear us?
Jeff?
Jeff, are you still there?
Something. They can fix it.
Robin, did he respond?
I just said they're working on it, but he's not responding to you, so.
Okay.
Can we check to make sure he's still connected? Thank you, Robin.
Oops.
Jeff, you there? Oh, you're going to read down? Okay.
You have the number? You want me to give it to you?
Not over the microphone.
No. Everybody, call Jeff.
Hello.
You there? Can you hear us, Jeff?
No, I really can't hear you.
Can you hear us now?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Okay, so they're going to use a handheld mic and talk really close to it. And so let us know if for some reason it fades out. They're going to put it right up there.
Okay, can you hear us?
Jeff, can you
Jeff,
hear
you there?
Tom?
I can hear you. I can't hear whoever else was talking.
Can you hear Tom? Can you hear this?
No.
What about this one? Jeff?
No.
Can you?
No, I can't hear that.
Tom, do you want to sit here?
Oh, I can. Are these guys going to be able to hear too, though?
Yeah, because
we can tell you that. Repeat stuff if necessary.
Can we just put it on that one? Yeah. We'll do it on our UFO ship. Probably.
No, I'm looking at the bid sheet. I don't have it.
I want to tell them to hang up.
Jeff, we're going to try
Yeah.
you through the UFO thing. So you can hang up right now. We'll call you again.
Okay.
All right. So, Tom, why don't you say something? See if
Jeff, can you hear us? Can you hear Tom at
You
Lamp?
sound really far away. Can't hear you too well.
Can you hear this one?
Barely.
Is this any better?
I think you're going to have to yell.
Jeff, can you hear us?
No.
Barely, but fine. Just go ahead.
Yeah.
We're gonna roll you over
would
there.
it help? Would it help for you to sit at one of the empty seats up here?
No, but we need all of them. So all of them have to.
Oh.
So we're going to move the phone into the center of the room.
And hopefully you
won't
can.
be able to hear any of us.
Oh,
Moving forward.
Like a
Alrighty, Tom, give it a try and see. Yeah, see if that works. Either one.
Jeff, can you hear us?
No, not really.
Oh,
All right.
okay.
Just,
16 a.m.
we need to get it recorded, so you have to use a microphone.
Okay.
Just talk as loud as you can, and we'll go from there. So we're now at the point where we've talked about the bids coming in higher than expected. We had 23 trade packages, over 120, I believe it was, bids. You've met with the low bidders to see if anything's missing, and action.
And from there, we've also let me back up a little bit, during the bid process too, which kind of pushed out the second bid release, there were some third-party storm shelter review comments that came back that we had increased the size of the storm shelter slightly. So that kind of added into the additional costs as well. And a couple of the major factors that we've kind of noticed talking to the bidders was the increase to the materials of steel to the federal government imposing the new tariffs. And then also the biggest thing probably is the additional site work that was incorporated. From the beginning, we've always kind of carried that below the $12 million budget. The way it's looking now is we have to try to incorporate that into our budget of the $12 million. And that was about over $1 million totaling up. On the budget sheet, I kind of left a separate column kind of totaling those items broken out separately so we kind of see where those costs are at.
Why was that off of the original budget?
All the roads and the site work.
Yeah.
We never anticipated those being a part of this project. That was always carried under the $12 million, which we kind of talked about at the other meetings.
Originally using the
Original.
Sullivan Center parking in and out was the original
So
plan.
that's the extra for that back road.
The road, the bus
Access
lot,
road.
the parent drop-off, yeah, no, the whole Phillip
And-
Road access.
Sorry to cut you off. So even in this case, if that access road, like just the road that we've been in negotiations with other parties involved to get it paid, that would not, because this, I mean, that is not included in this 1 million, or that is included in this 1 million.
In the 1 million, the site work's about
The
$1 million,
site work.
right?
Yeah.
Right.
It's included in the 2.7, but if you took out $1 million for the site work, it would be 1.7 additional costs. That's roughly, if I'm,
Yeah, million. No, 1,000,007.
Yeah, over the 12 million, correct.
Yeah. No, I was just wondering, like, even if we took off that access
Correct.
road, or we could get the access road off, like completely, and go back to our original plan, we would still be above the
Above
budget
the
by
12 million, yes.
12 million by 1.7.
Correct.
Correct.
Yes. That's what I
And
just
that's
wanted.
why we're attributing portions of that to the steel tariffs, and then
Yeah.
also the increased size to the storm shelter also contributed. So there's other factors.
No, definitely, but I just wanted to understand how much was the contribution to just that access road
Correct.
part of it. If we,
Yeah, and that's the
Yeah.
separate column is to try and identify
Yeah.
that.
So, yeah, so in that 14.7 total that we're at right now, just over $1 million of that is all the site work, the roads, site utilities, the additional landscaping, parking lots, those things.
So the shelter is 36,000 to the 41,000. Is that the difference in that? Because I don't remember. I don't know. Maybe I missed it. I don't remember that uppage in square footage.
That's what I had
Before.
asked too.
Yeah, when did we go from 36,000 to 41,000?
July of last year.
But
When
do
we
you
were in
know
the-
if that was like in various rooms, or was that just the storm shelter increase, or where was the 5,000 square foot?
So components of it were included in the storm shelter. So when you think about the mechanical systems sitting on the rooftop of a storm shelter and being reliant for the life safety of those occupants inside, that mechanical system has to be protected. So we moved it inside to a mezzanine, and that was part of the square footage increase. And then likewise, there was other rooftop equipment off of the multipurpose commons room that also got moved inside to the mechanical mezzanine. So those two things contributed to the square footage. So
it's not, it is usable space, but it's not usable space for like humans, like students. It's not
No,
programming
correct.
space. Yeah,
No,
thank you.
correct.
So the increase in, you said square footage was July of last year.
Correct. During the design, the build up to the schematic design presentation in the fall.
So believe when we were talking about right before we went out to bid, we kind of went over the budget and kind of said, are you still good with this 12 million? That should have accounted that increase in square footage, correct?
Yeah, and it
Yeah.
did, and based on the feedback that we were getting from contractors, based on just where we were seeing the cost compared to other projects, things looked like they'd be in line. And
So whether they're in line, okay, you got that information. So we can't use the increase in square footage as a reason for the increase in price,
No,
because
it's
you
more-
knew at the time going out to bid, that was the number.
This is more of a summary of what's happened over the past few years when the project started. It's not an indicator of
I understand. But before we went to bid, we kind of said, are you confident with that 12 million going out before we got all the trade packages back? At that point in time, we knew the square footage had already been increased.
Correct.
And the answer we got back from you guys was, yes, we're still good with those numbers. So, yes, it did increase, but it should not be a factor in this increase in price that we're seeing now, is my position. And I'm trying to understand, am
I was confused
Am
because
I
it was
wrong
in your
there?
memo, Tom.
Right.
And so I was just wondering where the, you know.
Yeah,
change in
so,
scope came,
yeah,
but
sorry
it wasn't
for
a
the-
recent
No,
change in
no,
scope,
it was
correct?
correct.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry for that confusion. We were just trying to kind of give budget history, kind of where it started, and kind of what we're up to now, and just everything that's involved with the project at this point.
But still, your original numbers that you gave us, they came out in August. So I don't know why that.
A consideration.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're
Yeah.
not considering it in this overage. It was just, again, just trying to tell us where the project started from, and that's all. It's not an indication of why we're 2.7 over at
Right.
this point.
But your original numbers included the 41,000 square feet.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's
We-
part of the reason why we're not necessarily asking for an approval. Part of what we've discussed is that we would like to go back and look further into why it went over. Because we have gotten some feedback as to items we agreed, for instance, the HVAC system. We were both in agreement with the engineers that it should be less than what it's coming out to be, and we want to figure out why it's coming out to be more. So that's why we've asked for more time to look at things like that, and we have a list of other things we've identified. So we're not asking to move forward with anything right now. We're actually asking for more time to come back to tell you whether or not we can get this project down to 12 million without impacting the design, the least amount of impact the design of the school.
And who pays your hourly rate while
Yeah,
you go and do that work?
We have a fixed fee.
Yeah, the extra time isn't costing us anything extra.
Ours, no.
How much time would that take? Like how much time would you guys need to figure out, like why certain things are higher than they were told to you, essentially, because you did the pre-bid
Mhm.
before you went. So how much time would that take?
Well, to go through the whole list, a few weeks, we were hoping to come back at that May 14th meeting, I believe is
So,
the next
okay.
board meeting. So at that time, we'd come back with a list of items, options, anything that we can come up with to help us get back to that $12 million budget mark.
Okay. And in your expert opinion, but between you and Jason, I mean, this is up by 2.7. This is not, and from what my understanding is, we have already done the value engineering on that. Most of the value engineering has been done on this building before it went out. So even if we do find components of it that we can shed or cut, whichever way, I don't know what the exact term is, how much do you think realistically we could come back? Because steel is steel, right? It's going to stay up. I mean, till something happens at the federal level, there's no way we can cut the cost of that. So at what, how much can we realistically expect this to come down from the 14.7 in your expert opinion? I won't hold you to it,
Right,
but just
it's-
like kind of, I know
mean,
you
it's-
can't give me an exact number, but a
It's
ballpark.
all in what kind of items are open to change, to reduce. It is a hard number to say. We have such an extensive list right now. I'd hate to just throw a number out there. But
One of the things to consider, I remember when we were going through the design phase, you had asked about the levels of quality of certain materials. So let's look at mechanicals for the HVAC. You might get a less expensive HVAC system, but what's the life expectancy, the repair, the ongoing, I forget what you guys call it, like the ongoing cost of maintenance of something like that sort. So there's a piece in there. You might look at components, but you have to be careful of what adjustment you might make.
No, that's why
depending
we
on
are
the life.
asking their
Yeah.
expert opinion in
Right,
doing
so
it, because
that's
I'm
why-
assuming this work is already done by you guys, because you gave us the best deal or the best equipment we needed in there with the being most fiscally responsible, because, we've always been very upfront that this is all we have and we need to get this built. So I'm assuming that has all been done. Like if that's the HVAC, like I'm not putting in like, something top of the line. I'm going with something that is the most, with the cost benefit analysis of it.
I would say it's pretty top of the line.
Okay.
It's pretty high. So we want to evaluate that with DLR and be
Okay.
able to come back in May 14th and
Okay.
be able to present you with the options that we all agree to, not to just, it's a team effort here that we want to try and get to the point where we believe you want to be. Part of our question does remain, though, is if the real number is 12 million and we've got $1.1 million worth of site work that I don't think was ever accounted for back when we approved, but when we came back July or August, that amount was never in there. So that's part of what's been added to the cost of the project. So we need to talk about, I think, what's the number that we need to get to. If it's actually 12 million and we've got to absorb $1.1 million worth of site costs within that 12 million, that becomes a much bigger hurdle than trying to cover the remainder of that through looking at things within the building.
I guess I'd like to qualify. I don't consider the mechanical system that you have in this design to be top of the line. I think that's a
That's wrong. I would-
mischaracterization.
I'm
of
saying
the
we agreed
words.
to it to be a little bit less than, as far as the cost per square foot, and it's a little bit more. So we just want to go back and discuss it with them. But again, we're asking for more time. This has all happened in the last.
No. We
so-
understand, but we are just trying. I mean, I don't think anybody disagrees that we need to vet this a bit more. But all we are trying to figure out is like kind of with your expert opinion where we would land up being. I don't know about the rest of us. We could probably agree that we do not want to cut any space to meet the 12 million. We need the space that we need. So, cutting classrooms or cutting playground or cutting that space is not something we want to do. We want to be
That's what
very.
I was going to share, Sonali, if I could. I think
Sure,
that
go ahead.
space is probably the means that you could cut the most amount of money out of the bid. And to Nick's point, I think that the system choices that you make have an initial cost, and then they have a life cycle cost. And the choices that you have when it comes to controllability of your rooms is also important. So you can put in less expensive systems, you can put in less expensive materials in certain instances, but you have to look at the ongoing annual costs associated with each one of those decisions. I think that's part of the value proposition, but in my opinion, I think at some point you're going to have to consider space to make that last little bit of budget, if that makes sense. So we'll probably be able to look at the list, and it's a pretty exhaustive list of things that you could still do to reconcile the dollars. And then I think that last bit to get you into the end zone, so to speak, is going to be space.
Can I say something? So Jason kind of said part of what I was going to say, which is I think as a board we need to decide where the priority is to tell them to go back and start, sharpening their pencils.
Yes, definitely.
Is this on? It says it's on, but it's not on.
Are you on?
Can everybody hear me?
Tap on it.
It's not on.
Oh, now it's on.
So I personally think, given the fact that there's already concern over the ongoing operating budget of this building on an annual basis, I'd be concerned to take our mechanicals down to a level where I think maybe in the short run it saves us money, but in the long run costs us more. I'm not sure what space I think we can do away with in a building, in a district that's already cramped for space. I don't, if you might remember my protest over the fact that we were going from what I thought was going to be 18 to 22 classrooms down to 16 plus 2 maker spaces. So I think as a board, not only should we try to come to some kind of consensus about where we can ask them to start looking again, but I think we need to be realistic in that if this is only going to be a Band-Aid solution, it is just not an efficient or responsible spend of our dollars. It may just be something that we had to vet and we had to spend some money vetting it and cut our losses. Like, I hate to say it, but I was really disappointed. I think I expected it to be 8 to 10% off, if anything. That was shockingly off. And I think the concern I would have is going forward, these commodities prices could fluctuate even more. And who's going to pass along that cost? I mean, is that going to end up being ours to eat in the end? Or are they held to these bid numbers once they agree to go ahead with the project? I mean, I know from building my own house, they weren't held to the bid numbers. Every time they had an increase in price, it got passed along to me. So I think that's a real concern, is even if we can get them down to, let's say 12 and a half, is it going to really end up being 14 in the end anyway?
And there's some things that we can look at, like soil conditions. I mean, it's somewhat likely that that will increase the costs along the way. And so if we're at such a fine margin or so far over, something that we have to take into account, consider.
Towards the bottom of the page, you can see we have $541,000 in just construction contingency that's included in the overage right now, and then another $172,000, which is built into their allowances, built into each contractor's amount. So right now we have, well, let me take that back. If you're including the site work, there's $763,000 just in contingency dollars that whatever's not used will go back to you. And yes, we have planned for some probably poor soil conditions once we get into that area. but, you know, that as well is included into the 14.7. So
So if you look at
it's-
hard numbers, we're actually at 2 million over because we have $700,000 of contingency beyond that included within the budget right now to cover any issues that might come up during construction.
But it could be more than 700,000 worth of issues.
I mean,
it
are there
could be.
any significant cosmetic things we could look at that are not going to be something we're like, okay, we cheaped out on the final flooring and now we have to replace it every 5 years? Like, is there something cosmetic we could do that would save significant dollars? The exterior materials, which I brought up several months ago, like, what can we do?
So the precast material already has a deductive alternate associated with it to be a stained precast instead of a pre-finished precast. The rest of the building is basically made out of split face block, which is a very inexpensive building material in the spectrum of building materials. There probably are some fascias and some things like that that could be looked at, but by and large, I don't think there's a lot of aesthetics. I don't know if it was made mention, but there was a value engineering process along the way that occurred at each phase. And so if you recall, when we came in design development and presented some aesthetic changes and some changes to the north wall and things like that, that was out of recognition of those already. And so there's probably some more money to be saved there, but on an order of magnitude, it's not, in my opinion, significant.
Okay, I think as a board, we need to first come up, like as Jason mentioned, and from their expertise, one of the biggest things would be space. So I think we need to come as a consensus. Whatever the dollar amount falls at, we can have them look at maybe an HVAC, and I'm just throwing it out, don't like as an HVAC or, like you said, maybe the cosmetic of a fascia or something to look at dollar amount. Our biggest one is space. Are we ready to compromise on it or not? I mean,
Where do we have extra space?
no, I know, but we need to come to a consensus before we start telling them. So, if we go ahead and tell them that cannot be touched, then they have to figure out some other line where it can be and start coming down to numbers. I'm just thinking out loud.
Okay, so I'll say, to me at this point, space is non-negotiable. Like, we need the space. This is the size we need. Anything smaller isn't going to set us up for the long run. And, like Robin said, Band-Aid. So space to me is non-negotiable.
Okay, I agree. Jason, you were saying
I'm just
something.
saying those types of conversations we need to have as a board, independent of them being here. We can then give them the direction that we come to consensus to.
No,
I'm just thinking, but I think we can do that after we've got all the answers from them. Then we can talk as a board saying, what do we want? How do we want to, what's important to us? How do we get the site work to disappear if we had to? Because if that's not included, what do we do? So that's a conversation I think we need to have. But I think with them here, we need to get from them what we can to understand so that we can then move forward.
And I have one thing that I'd like to get clarification on. Okay, so Tom, you mentioned that the HVAC was top of the line, but then Jason Lemke came back and said that it's not.
It's more than what we had figured in the budget. It's not. I don't want to say top of the line because that can get pretty extreme. It's more than what we had figured. The controls are more than what we had figured. For instance, I believe we have thermostats in most every room. Sometimes it's not every room, it's every few rooms. So there are things like that we just want to further evaluate as to why. So that's why we'd like to have more time to evaluate some of those things as to why it's more than what we figured in the budget based on what our discussions were as a team, what we thought they should be.
Okay. So it's not really that the system's top of the line, it's that the price is top of the line.
That's what we feel, and that's what we want to figure out why.
I'm not going to pay for a Bentley and drive a Ford.
And that's what we want to. That's why we're asking for more time. Is what we're really
I just wanted to get that cleared up. Thank you.
So looking at some of these differences, I'm trying to understand how you might even cut enough to get us within the ballpark. I mean, if you talk about HVACs, we're 40% over the initial budget. That's something that you really think we can get down. That was even if we take off all of the steel increase and the site work, that's still $500,000 above what we had thought about. So is that something that can even?
We'd like to explore it and see why. And that's why we'd like to come back with more time. Because again, this building doesn't have to start construction until later in the summer to be done for next summer. It's an 11, 12-month project. So we feel like we've got the benefit of time right now, so we'd like to go back and explore those items, provide you with a list of what we think we can do to get you there, and then we can make then a decision can be made.
Just concerned about the big misses. HVAC, that's 40%.
So
Plumbing,
exactly. So are we.
you know, plumbing is 40% over, you know, and these are huge numbers.
Right.
Again, that's why we want to go back and talk to them. We just haven't had that time yet to do so, to figure those things out in detail.
I guess also what I'm thinking about is if we give them this time, you know, we're still trying to plan ahead for the future for our other endeavors to fix our space issues. And so if we're waiting, we don't really know our true need. And so that complicates moving forward in other aspects.
No, not necessarily. I don't think that is, I can come back to that in a little bit. But
If we had to scrap the kindergarten center altogether,
why would we have to scrap it? It could, instead of going out of the 12 million out of our budget, if that is the plan that works, it could go back on, it could go on the referendum.
that's not what the park district said.
We could, I mean, that is a different topic and different negotiations we can have,
Yeah,
but right
that's
now.
a very another topic
That's a
we do need to talk
very
about.
Big risk.
No, but it is. But the thing is, if we are in a place where it cannot happen at all, so it's something that we can negotiate the same way we can negotiate a little bit on the access road, not a whole lot, but we can see where it is going. If that is the best plan to solve our space needs, it is at least a topic we would have to go back to and start talking about and seeing if it is a possibility with them.
So, question on some of the site work that was requested by the village. Was that a strong suggestion, or is that a mandatory requirement they put on us in order to proceed with this project?
I have a meeting on Friday with the village and Victor Center and some folks looking at some adjustments. I think that the village is open to making some changes. Initially, the plan that was proposed is what they were asking to be accomplished. So I think there's some wiggle room in that. For the Park District question, I probably can get a letter from them within a week on their position, so then you would know. And that at least would answer that question.
Never hurts to ask.
Yeah, no, but if they say
if
they say they're supportive, then you have an option. If they say absolutely not, then you know, then if you can't pay cash for it, then it's a different solution. But I can try to get that within a week. But I think there are options on the traffic pattern that I'm trying to resolve, and some of the funding I'm trying to resolve, but I don't have anything I can commit to at this point.
So now that we have the pricing on the site work for the traffic and all that stuff, we can come back to them and say, this request is costing us this much. You want this turnaround, it's going to cost us. You want this road, and they can then come back and say, well, this is the most important. We want this. Maybe we'll keep that, and the rest don't. How much you can save. Now that we have those numbers, that discussion might be a little more fruitful in terms of
I mean, we actually have a hard
priorities.
Right. And I did make them aware on Thursday that you would be discussing the bid package today, and asked them, I told my contacts there that the issue that we had, but asked them not to talk about it publicly, so you could have your time to have the conversation. So they are aware, and they know I'm coming back to them this week with some questions and seeing if there's any support from the Park District and from the village differently. But the quotes give me a hard number. I can put it on the table now and say, this isn't a $500,000 project that you're asking for. This is $800,000.
Two things. First of all, when you do come back, if you could do us a favor and be prepared to answer what we would have to give up. If you tell us we can get you HVAC, but it's going to be this system instead of this system, please come back with an honest answer about what we're going to be giving up and what that's going to cost us moving forward in the long run, because that's something I would literally have no ballpark figure in my head for. And number two, I still think it's risky. We can ask the Park District again. I still think it's risky. That doesn't mean that it passes just because we ask. So it's just more time and more money spent trying to push this forward on something that might not be able to move forward.
I mean, we are giving them time to find out what they could do, and
I know.
it's the same amount of time we can give. The Park District. We need to have that decision by. Hopefully, we can talk to them and see if they can give us some sort of a decision by the 30th when we have the working meeting to do our plans. Okay. And if they say they put in mind, at least it is one of the viable options that is there.
Right.
We are in a place where we have to go and ask them. So I think we will go and ask them.
Yeah, I mean, like I
You have
said,
a
it doesn't
problem,
hurt to
Julie?
ask.
No,
I just think I kind of agree with
hard.
what Julie's saying of having this working meeting April
Yeah.
30th for the plans the community has suggested. We're all under the assumption we would have this space built, and it just might not happen, in which case, back to the drawing board on solving the space issue for the district.
No, definitely,
well,
but
and
we have
maybe
to go ask them to see if they will help us with it. I mean,
And I mean, I don't know when we have to cancel, but maybe we should consider postponing the next meeting.
The April 30th.
Why? Because if we get an answer, this is still a viable option to put on the board. I don't see
But
why.
we won't have their answer by then, and we.
No, but even if their option, even if with all the value engineering, it still comes back, we have a solid number of 14.7. If it is a viable option and the park district allows us to go
for
to
2.7.
referendum for all of it, or 2.7, or whatever it is that they decide, it is still a viable option. I don't think it is completely ruled out as
Well,
yet.
but
But then
if-
we also have to,
Come to consensus and choose to go that route between all of us.
but we also have to, there's also the concern, is there community support for doing a kindergarten center?
That would be, but at least if we put it up as an option, then the community can let us know about it. Right now, as Jason mentioned, let's see if we have any questions for, LAMP regarding, or what we want them to do, and then we can talk amongst ourselves of what direction we want to give them. Jeff, do you have any questions for Tom and Jay?
Yeah, what is it specifically about the site work that was unanticipated and is resulting in the extra cost?
It was just something that I thought we were always under the impression that none of the roads or the parking lot was ever to be included within the 12 million. Correct. When we first started this, it was supposed to be that they would utilize the Sullivan Center parking lots for turnaround and drop off and everything. And then when the city started to ask for the roads and the circulation through the site, that's when it all started to come up. And some of the civil drawings, actually, we didn't even get until we were actually going out to bid. I think we got them the morning that we came to ask you to go out to bid. I know we knew there was ideas of what would come up, but there was never discussion that it would be put into the 12 million at that point. So that's why it's over the 12 million.
Is it possible to redesign the exterior and the drop-off so that we utilize more of the existing parking lot? Because we did have a budget, and so it's not like we have additional dollars beyond what we originally budgeted. So is it possible to redesign the exterior and go back to the village and say we need, to redesign it in order to fit within our budget?
Yeah, Jeff, I'm trying to have those meetings with them. I've got one on Friday, but I'm trying to have one before that, specifically on that topic, to look at making some adjustments to the scope they asked us to do, and to kind of confirm what support monetarily they are trying to put in there. We know that they've put some money in the budget. They haven't confirmed how that's going to be offered to us, but I'm trying to get that solidified. Now I have some hard numbers. So we are looking at trying to adjust the traffic pattern to meet the needs of our building, but also to meet some needs the village are trying to get resolved as well. So I'm hoping I can have some more answers for you in 2 weeks. I can send out a memo and say, here's what I know from the village and what options we have.
7 days. We
Like,
need to have these options by 30th so that we can know that this is a viable, with some, because if we want to put it in front of our community as part of the plans or whatever we decide to do, we need to make sure that we know what, where we are leading towards.
Like, I guess one of the questions to the village is it possible, would they allow us to do what our original plan was? Use the existing parking lot for parking and drop off and not have any new site work that they're asking for? Is that even a possibility? Would they even grant that? Something that we need to know.
That's like question number one that
Yeah.
I have going back to them. And then a slight adjustment is possible to there. I'm sorry.
Well, no, you just said 2 weeks, and Sonali said we need it in a week, so is a week possible?
I don't know because I haven't had a chance to talk to Joe Carey at the village today. I was hoping to have a conversation with him. We've been playing phone tag. I will do my best to have it in 7 days, but
Because, like I said, I don't want to have this meeting if we don't have these answers, and if we're not, so we find out the morning of that we don't have these answers, and we still have this meeting. That's what I'm concerned
Okay, even
with.
if we have the meeting, here is the thing. I don't know. Right now, the plan we have is a good plan that solves the problem. The question is, It is not what it came out to be, but it is still a good plan. If we decide, we can still go out with 14.7. If they give us 1.1, they give us a write-off, it drops our budget down. If we decide not to do anything else and they give us 1.1, it is still a valid plan. There is no harm in telling what the plan is, and because it is a valid plan, and let the community tell us that if that is what they don't want, then they don't want. But we have to go out with all the plans that we are coming up with or will come up with at that point. So canceling a meeting, which was a working meeting to come up with plans, is one way to do it. How we are going to finance it, whether it all goes to referendum, it's part referendum, part reserves, part somebody else helping us pay for it, it's still a valid plan, I think.
So I guess canceling isn't what I'm looking for. Maybe more the word is postponed until we have all our information.
Well, we have the tentative meetings. There's a meeting that's tentative. So if we don't have all the information about the 30th, could we have the tentative meeting?
The May 10th or 17th or whatever that was.
Yeah.
But why would we not start the process? Is
Because
that
it might
something I'm
be-
not understanding right
It could
now?
be a waste of time if we.
Yeah.
Why would it be that is what I'm not understanding, because it
if
still
one-
is a valid plan.
You're saying it's a valid plan, but when we hear all the information back, maybe the rest of us won't still find it to be a valid plan.
Or a viable plan.
A viable
it may
plan,
be
yes.
a valid plan, it
But it
just
might
may
not be viable.
And so trying to vet these community feedback options, not knowing whether 16 classrooms just fell off the plan, is almost an impossible task. If we were talking about 1 or 2 classrooms here or there, that'd be fine. But to go and vet all those options, and then this may never come to fruition, would totally change that plan.
Wouldn't that be a key topic to talk about then? Have the community there in on this, or you out? Got a large group of people who are clearly involved now.
Okay, so let's say on
And
April
that's-
30th, 20 people come, and let's say they
Well-
say we're out. It's 20 people.
I mean, we've
It's
got
still the 20 people that show up to
I
all
mean,
of them, so.
Well, and I mean, those people I think have been pretty clear on where they stand on this anyway. I don't even think we need to sit them in a room and ask them.
Well, that's a different topic. But anyway, I mean, I think
It's not clear to
fine,
me.
but is it realistic to get these numbers in a week? I mean, it may help move that conversation forward if the consensus is this April 30th meeting absolutely has to happen. But if
We need-
if
I'm
we
just
don't even
saying,
have
we
those
we
numbers-
complain that they don't come to us and tell us, and now we have an opportunity to at least get a straight answer from them. Even if
That's
it's just
fine.
20 people,
If you think that needs to happen April 30th instead of May 10th, that's fine.
I'm fine with it, and then
I-
we can add a tentative.
I'll
is
show
where
up 5 days in a row. I don't care. But, you know, I just don't want to waste their time going, well, we don't know. Is this happening? Is it not happening? You know.
Jeff, do you have anything to add, say?
I do have one more.
I think, you know, it's premature without getting the second look at the cost and seeing what LAMP and DLR can do. So I think we need to get those numbers, but I don't see a reason to cancel getting the community feedback on the broader issue of overcrowding schools. So I think we should proceed with that. But I think at the same time, the board needs to be thinking over the next few weeks what other options we have if this project ends up being non-viable.
Okay, just so everybody's clear in the community, for anybody who's watching or listening, the April 30th one is not to solicit feedback about the plans. It is to vet the plans that we've already received through email or other forms
Or
of
come up
feedback.
with other plans, or whatever plans, or modify the plans that we have. We'll put them up.
The
That's-
setup is going to be different than the last 3 meetings we've had.
Yes, it is a different setup. We'll come to the community engagement. Do we have any questions for Tom and
I do.
Jay?
So when you guys look at opportunities to lower these numbers, what's the process? Do we have to go out to bid? Or is it working with the low bidder? Is that the only thing? How is that
It'll kind of depend
fair to all bidders if we're changing rules or changing what we're asking? I'm just trying to understand how that works
Yeah, it'll
from a
just kind of
process.
depend on the item that we're looking at, whether, you know, we're changing a wall to one material to another. It kind of depends on the amount too. There's a certain percentage that if it gets high enough, then yes, it would require a rebid, but we'll be able to kind of get an idea on what those numbers are up front, hopefully by the 14th, and then we'll decide if it's something that is worth going out for a rebid, or we're able to work with the low bidder on the thing. Some of the bigger items, especially with the contractors, with like precast, you don't really want to lose their time slot if it's something that we can work with them on. So, and to get all them back to the table to bid again, you could end up losing a number and end up paying more later, sort of thing. So it's kind of a case by case basis, depending on what the items are. And we'll be able to identify on the list that we give you if we think that it's something we can work with the contractor on, or if it's such a drastic change that we should go out to rebid. And hopefully there are items that we have time to rebid as the project's still moving forward. If it's like casework or something that's inside the building that doesn't take, that we don't need right away, those sorts of things. But
From a legal point, there's nothing requiring us to go out to do rebids or anything like that. I have no idea how this works.
Again, in general, a lot of them would be rebid because of the volume of the change that would occur.
Okay.
So but there are items, as Tom mentioned, like the precast is one that likely would not, because we feel like we've got the best number that we're going to get for that one.
Okay.
And if it goes out any further, it's not going to get any better because it's not going to get any cheaper. So, but again, the bids are held open for 60 days.
actually,
90 on this
Yeah,
one?
we
So we've got,
extended the time.
again, we've got time, so we'd like to go back and look at it to be able to decipher what exactly is causing some of these items to go where they're going. And those ones like, if we can work on the HVAC, if we can work on the electrical, if we work on some of those items and there's significant changes, those items would be rebid.
And to answer, I think as you were having asked the question about costs that are passed on if prices still go up, they're locked into their contract amount. So that's unfortunately why we're seeing increases in steel, because they're not taking the risk on losing anything. So they're just, including more dollars into their bid so they don't lose out later when some of these tariffs don't even come to fruition, and then they're just ahead, so it's.
So labor and everything's included, so.
Yeah, and we get labor rate sheets so when there is something additional, we know what their hourly rate is up front. That's what we hold them to, and we get all because there's always a yearly raise through the unions every June.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll get that dollar amount, be able to add it on for next year's increase, but.
Well, we hold them to the hourly rate, but who's to say how many hours something takes, and can we hold them to that? I mean, obviously, if we change the scope of the project, then that's on us, and we do a change order or something. But if they estimated something was going to take them 80 man hours and it took them 100 man hours, who pays for that?
If they gave us a price for 80 man hours, they gave us a price for 80 man hours, and it was approved that way. Sometimes there are those occasions when they say it's going to be 80, we think it's going to be 60, so we'll ask them to do it, T&M not to exceed 80, and hopefully if it comes in at 72, you get the benefit of the savings back.
Time and material.
Sorry.
I have a question. So Tom, your initial estimated numbers were based on RS means and your own historical data, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And subcontractors looked at all of our numbers beforehand, probably more than we ever have on another project. We actually had contractors looking at the drawings, because to DLR's credit, they had the MEPs very far along before we even bid the project. So we had 3 numbers from contractors who basically bid the project before we put it out to public bid.
Okay.
So that's where we're at a loss for some of those items.
Okay. Because when I, read the memo and, we haven't even moved any dirt and we're 28% over budget, which was a shock. I'm looking down the road, we have to do some things and, got a referendum coming. If these are 28% over budget, it wasn't expected, how are we going to be able to come up with numbers that we can give to our community that are going to be somewhat, accurate? Is that possible?
For the rest of the projects, if we.
Yeah.
Like if
Again,
we tell them.
It's part of it where it goes back to what you're comparing it to.
Okay.
So if the road was something that's outside of what was originally figured.
Okay.
So
right.
if you take that out of
That's
the picture,
fair.
I'm just hearing the 20% number, and if you take that out of the equation, it's reduced more like to 10%. Now, I still agree that that's over, but now the steel tariffs also come into play on that. So that was, I think we were looking at $300,000 to $500,000 on that item. And then there's obviously still like maybe it's $700,000 to $900,000. But again, some of those we have identified, and are we all the way to wiping those out to zero? No. But again, we haven't had time to evaluate all those to the depth we need to with DLR, with staff at the school district, to know that they're viable. And so we've identified those things, but again, we need more time to be able to come back and tell you this is exactly why these numbers have come in where they're at. But again, the problem is that still, that the road is the elephant in the room, because that was never part of the 12 million.
But I think what you're asking for is like once you check the numbers, you come back and you say, all right, we did our best. We're at 12.8, for example, just throwing out a number. That's the number then we can tell our community, and that's what it will be, and that won't change.
But we
Minus
still have-
maybe some contingency.
We
That'd be
still have
about
the
it.
contingency in there, and again, that's your money. So if whatever we don't use out of that, that comes back to you. But again, that is to cover changes that might occur. Now, this is I'm not going to say simple. This is a building addition. There's no renovation work on the inside. So things that we might incur that the soils condition, that's a perfect one. But once you get out of the ground, typically on a building like this, the changes are fairly minimal. It's when you get into interior renovations is where it gets pretty complicated and for a lot of unknowns.
It seems like there's consensus to give you guys more time. I just think the question is, you guys want May 14th. I think we would prefer April 30th. I don't think it's realistic when you're talking about what you really have to do to get these numbers down. I don't think it's realistic to think you're going to come back in a week.
I agree.
So,
Okay, let's one step at a time. So do we have consensus to give them time to explore it?
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so that's one thing. Thank you. And so as far as your next thing was, to give community numbers. I don't think we could give community numbers no matter which plan we choose, regardless of the whole spectrum of plans. Like, even if we have 5 plans, because we wouldn't be able to run numbers that day, as you just pointed out, to the precision that we have, right? We would have to take the plan, we would have to take it to them and say, approximately bid it out and tell, like, I want to do renovation of 4 classrooms to this and 3 classrooms to that. It is all going to come out to an approximation numbers that we will have to at that point. We'll start with, we are at, and once we bid out the numbers to as close an approximation we can, that's the numbers we can say. This plan is, 10, 20, 40, 50, whatever we come out, those will still be approximation numbers till we can run them to the final thing. So we will have to go out with a plan. What we are selling is not a dollar amount. We are going to sell a plan. We are going to ask the community to choose a plan that best suits their vision and solves for our needs. So if this is a plan is separate from, the dollar amounts which will come. That day we are asking them to choose a plan. We'll come back with the dollar amounts once we give it to them to ask them to help us narrow it down. Till DLR actually does, draws which 3 classrooms and where they goes, I don't think Tom could actually run us the exact number on that 3 classrooms, but they'll come close to giving us what number it is. So we'll at least be able to say, if you like plan A, then it's approximately this amount of dollars, and plan C is this amount of dollars. Once they choose, if that's their vision, that's viable, we'll come back and run the numbers as tight as we can. So I think, we can still do this on the 30th. We can still have it on the 14th. Between the 30th, if we come down to 3 plans, we can still ask them to run approximate numbers on the 14th to run all of those numbers to present to the community about each plan and each number approximately runs as close as possible with expert opinion.
Can I ask a question? I'm sorry.
I was just Wes, to back up on your question a little bit. We'll actually be able to use this project as a good starting point. If this is where we're seeing the market go with this type of quality in the construction, for future, the other additions or whatever, we'll be able to use actually these numbers that we got and kind of apply them to whatever additions or, maybe. So, there's, again, we're going back on our end to really try to figure out, where we were off on things. But we'll be able to apply those to the next project. And we'll obviously have a much better idea now that, this is what we're seeing currently right now, and use those are our new cost histories, basically.
Yeah, I mean, if we go to referendum, we need to
do
a pretty good job of making sure that we're asking
right
for the right amount of dollars that we need. Okay. And so, we go and we ask, and then it comes back, and we're 20.
Right.
It's going to cost us 20% more that we don't have.
No, I understand, and some of it is too just designing within the budget as well too. If we got a certain dollar amount, that's what we got to kind of work towards too, and we'll give you those options. But using this as a baseline, as a project for your future ones, we understand the quality and what's going to go into these buildings, and we can start basing our numbers more off of this guideline here.
If
So
the-
just
the
list,
board- Go right
I'm
ahead.
saying, just listening to some of your comments, it seems like you were also quite surprised at the difference and the overage.
Very much,
Have you been working on any other projects, seeing similar surprises, so to speak, recently, or are we the first to give you this big whoa?
This is the first with the steel tariff impact. We've got a few more coming in this week where we'll see how they come out. But part of it was, again, part of the surprise in the numbers that have the big variances. We had solid numbers, before we went out to bid a few months ago.
Ignore the site work, yeah,
Yeah,
ignore that.
Where we thought, because of the how far DLR was along with the drawings before we went out to bid, and having contractors look at those drawings and giving us feedback, and again, it was 3 or 4 contractors in most every category. So it was definitely very surprising in some of those. So that's why, again, we need to reevaluate those.
And you point out the HVAC one earlier. Typically a $30 to $35 square foot for HVAC is a pretty good system. And seeing it come in closer to 40, that's what we need to kind of wrap our heads around a little bit with the local contractor as to why is it the controls, the equipment, what is it, and we'll hopefully be able to bring those back to you, and maybe some items to scale it down if they open up to a different control contractor, and things like that we can come up with ideas to help scale that number back down to closer where it should be, where we've seen it in the past.
Any more questions for Tom and Jay?
Just real quick, I wanted to just kind of make sure I have an understanding. I wrote a couple of things down that I know I'm trying to get, a letter from the Park District if possible on support, information from the board, village board about traffic patterns, information from the village about financial support, those types of things. But the board's given in consensus for them to have more time. What is the expected due date of them to come back, provide information?
As soon as you can. So 14th is probably the end of it, but if you can bring it earlier or whatever, whenever you're ready. 14th is what you asked, so 14th.
It's the next board meeting.
That's the next board meeting.
That's why, and realistically, that to do it right, but that's not to say we can't kind of piece it to you. As we're working on one thing, if it's going to take a little bit longer to vet, maybe we can get some of the smaller items that we kind of know right off the bat. We can get that list out, and maybe you can, I don't know how you guys would vote it. Say yes or no, or somebody that says yes or no right away, and we can move on.
No, I don't think we can, but I think it'll just give us some time to wrap our things around and try to keep consolidated, because we have a lot of things moving. So, as we come seeing it, some of it is also to kind of looking for optimistic solutions to look at it. Like, is there hope in this or is there not? And I think if you can send it to us as you get ready, it'll just be helpful for us to know how we are going in that direction.
Sure, yeah. So we'll try to do that when we get the list to a point that the team agrees is good enough to kind of send. And then as we're still working on others, we'll kind of keep updating the list, I guess, until we get back on the 14th. If that sounds reasonable,
It just helps me. I just want to know what the expectation
Yeah,
was.
I would say the 14th would be obviously be the
and we can have we can break down the numbers all over again. Any more, Jeff? Want to forget him?
I don't have any other questions.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks,
All right,
everyone.
so-
Thanks. Oh, sorry.
So if they come back the 14th,
Yes.
then that means we can't do anything until the 11th, correct? June 11th?
We have no meeting in the fourth Monday of May because it's Memorial Day.
Right.
We have the 21st. We have a community engagement meeting set up, and we have 30th. We have a community engagement meeting set up, so we can use both those days as special meetings to do whatever discussions we want.
All right.
So we have meetings in the middle to do our discussions. They're all set up already.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you.
Tom.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jay. You're going to stay. On the 17th, we had a community engagement meeting to review that. I had sent, from our past discussions that we've had since our February meeting and thing, we have gathered community feedback, and some of them, we needed explanations in certain things. We had certain suggestions. We had certain ideas that came forward. So I'm just going to read them. We are not going to go into a lot of details for it right now. So because we'll go into the details and elaboration of it on the April 30th meeting, because it is the community. We'll talk about what discussions we want to have, how do we want to structure the 30th meeting. So I just want to run by it so people can see what are some of the ideas and stuff that have come. People who have sent us ideas and stuff, either through email or through Let's Talk, they should have gotten answers or responses as to what we know from the work that was already done by the core team and our architects. So some of the suggestions that came in was do nothing after the kindergarten. Cuneo shouldn't go to north. You should phase the buildings out as construction. Don't do construction on all 6 buildings at the same time. K through 4 STEAM, is it necessary? Highlight the ramifications of declining school district for the community. 3 things, ask the people to 3 things that they are willing to spend on and the top priorities that community has. Some of the ideas that people sent in to solve some of our space issues was grade centers, redistricting, 8th grade, moving the 8th grade to high school. So we are only K through 7. Grade 5 through 8 middle schools, no kindergarten building. Grade 7 and 8 in a new building, 5 to 6 into the current middle schools, no kindergarten building. Building in Mundelein, there's a 11 acres on Butterfield. Adaptive reuse, look at more spaces to move something off campus. Some of them they suggested was Bally's, Babies R Us, or look at any office spaces that might be available. Building a new middle school and moving an elementary school into the old middle school. A smaller referendum instead of the one that we went out for, and rental of classrooms at Fairhaven or Santa Maria, because those 2 schools are closing apparently. That would be a short-term effect instead of putting portables. Those were the ideas that came up. Like I said, we'll discuss each idea in details, the answers, but anybody who sent us the answers, they were responded to. And if you didn't send us an email and you did not get an answer, please send an email again. It must be lost in some web world somewhere, because anybody who sent in questions or suggestions or ideas till today afternoon was responded to. And so that was the time. So the thing is, on the 30th, the plan on the 30th is a working meeting to come up with plans. Plans to solve our space needs. As I mentioned before, it was one of the plan was we won't be able to put exact dollar amounts on it. We can maybe approximate it from what we have and then add 25% more because of whatever. But we would come up with a plan that solves our needs without having constraints. One of the suggestions that we had was, even if we come up with plans, say 4 plans, 5 plans, whatever the plans are, we would have to prioritize them, right? We would have to rank them, see what they do, have to get a community feedback, how they would like it. That day was the plan. So we would kind of have to send out a survey. One of the things that DLR helped us find was, one of the things they suggested was, which seemed to have worked in some of the other districts, was you come up with a priority list. We sit down as a community, as board members, and come up with a priority list, which includes some of the things that are the most important to our community from all the feedback that we have received so far. So such as would be school safety and security, boundary lines, equity in spaces, right? Classroom sizes, flexible spacing, whatever it is. We'll come up with those 10, 11, 8, whatever number of priorities we come up with. And the options that we have, that we come up with, say the kindergarten level building, and how does that building score against all those priorities? So it might meet the classroom size as, it might meet the classroom size priority, but the traffic, it will be lower ranked in traffic, right? That plan is meeting. Am I saying it right?
Yeah, you're doing great.
Okay. Jump in whenever you want.
Okay.
So, and when we rank it, when we take all this feedback that we get to the community, we'll keep it open for a couple of weeks. When they rank their priorities, and we have ranked the building priorities of which building solves which priority, it will show us what our top 2 options are out of the 4 options or 5 options that we put together as a plan.
That's generally correct. So we've created an option modeling tool that allows you to apply priorities to plans. as Sonali explained, through a community process. And so this has proven to be effective in communities where there's significant engagement and discussion around any one of the ideas, right? So you have a plan. You took the first step in designing the Sullivan Center. Now you can, through your community engagement process, analyze not only this plan, but analyze others that were previously read or even others that haven't been suggested yet. And so the tool allows you to change the priorities and see how the options change score, right? So every option is weighted on its relative ability to satisfy the ideal criteria in that category, right? So safety and security, let's say you had a plan that was a 10 and a plan that was a 1. So the plan that was a 10 was perfect, and the plan that was a 1 had some significant shortcomings. By adjusting those priorities based on the input you receive, you would be able to see which option meets your needs, and it takes into account all of the factors and needs, not just any one. Does that make sense? So it's a weighted options matrix that allows you to see data in a different way, and you could sort the priorities by stakeholder group. In other words, you could say that our community members came back and said this, our parents came back and said this, our staff came back and said this, and so you could see how each one of those contrasts through the options. So it becomes a pretty effective conversation tool, which is why I recommended it to Nick and then to Sonali, just to see how we could move the conversation forward and as objective as we can be with the information coming in. So we would have multiple professionals independently score and rank the options and then average those to come up with the score. So it's not one person sitting in a room saying, I think that's a 10 and I think that's a 3. It's anywhere between 8 to 12 independent professionals who can rank those options and then aggregate those into basically an average score for each box.
How much does this cost us to run? And sorry,
First
that's
thought,
become
no,
my
it's the
number
first
one
thought I
question
had.
on everything right now.
Okay.
How much does it cost us to run, and how many responses will we need to get to have reliable numbers?
Well, so the reliability, that's up to you. It's not a scientific poll. It's not we won't be able to determine a margin of error based on the information that's coming in. So if you had 5 people respond or if you had 5,000 people respond, the results would vary. We also, depending upon how the survey was facilitated, you could sort the data by various demographic questions and take people at their word for who they say they are when they're surveying. So there's no way to create this as a scientific poll. This is just an organizational methodology. So as far as the question of cost, I'm willing to just do it because I think that it's something that we need to do to move forward as a professional, and then for you as a board to really make these decisions in a value-based proposition, right? Because opinions are tough, but when you aggregate them together and you average them across a number of factors, you can get some results. And you may find that several options are very close to one another, and then your job won't be actually much easier. I apologize for that in advance if that happens. But my supposition is that you'll see some differences, because if you look at site constraints, for example, and the additions at Middle North in proximity to the boundary, the street, if you will. So you've got some real pluses and minuses of some of these ideas, whereas if you took adaptive reuse, some of the traffic issues are solved. Some of the initial cost issues are solved. Now you have other challenges of long-term costs in adaptive reuse. So we're going to be able to really vet out what those pluses and minuses mean.
We anyway would have had to do a survey no matter what option plan we would have done to say, to get a community feedback. This survey seems to give us a lot more depth of understanding on a moving organizational way of what priority is met with certain plans which the people wanted. So Jason and his team were ready to, we have to do some work, but they will put this thing together and start getting it together so that it goes out on the 1st. On the 30th, when we come up with plans, without dollars, It is just a plan. When the plans go out, it will come up with, we will start running it on the 1st. So we can have it back by the 14th to run everything together on it.
Isn't that one of the priorities, is one of the factors is the cost?
Right.
If one plan meets all the needs but costs 10 times more than what we can afford,
But it would have,
it's on there, but that cost has to be accounted for, right?
I agree. So the way,
I would recommend that we do it on an order of magnitude or proportional basis. That we can establish a uniform expectation for dollar per square foot, and proportionally it will or should stay within an acceptable range of deviation, right? So Plan A is 50,000 square feet more than Plan B. I'm making this up, of course. Then obviously there'd be a discrepancy because you have the same cost basis. So we'll be able to determine that there is some relative difference, but to the exact dollar, I would put it as a range rather than an exact
So if we
dollar.
had to buy land to build a
For
whole new
sure.
building, that would be in there, that would take into account that price and that cost factor. Even though we won't know the exact amount of that land, we can guess.
We would put in a market rate or what we believe is a market rate for the land.
So we'd have some cost, I guess. is
some
what I'm
cost,
coming.
but not the exact cost. There's a difference in
no
that.
doubt. We still
That-
don't have exact.
Yes,
And
and
we
the, some of
went.
the and some of the work that we would have to do is in the next few days. So literally in the next 3 days, we, along with some of our administrators, would have to come up with the priorities so we can define what those 8 or 10 criteria of priorities are. Whether it's site size, traffic, everything else. Those fiscal responsibility, those criteria have to come in the next 2 or 3 days so that we can run this thing on the 1st, it's ready to go. We will review how it looks exactly on the 30th so we can still make a change or tweak it if we really needed to. So that would be one of the things that we would have to do in the next.
So that's just coming up with a list of criteria, not
Yeah.
the priorities of the criteria. That's the next
Correct.
step.
Yes,
the
it's a
definition
list
of-
of
Choices they would
Yeah,
get to choose.
exactly.
for priority.
Yeah.
Okay. Can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
If the administration comes up with a list, can we discuss the list and make a final decision at the April 30th meeting about that? Because
Yeah.
I really think since the board has been the voice of this attempt at the referendum so far,
Sure.
I think we should keep that consistent.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. We just come up with a priority and we'll finalize it on 30th so it can run out on the 1st.
Right.
So we'll set it out. So everybody's priority, we'll see what our top 8 come out to be.
I mean, is this where we're asking, like, is STEM a priority? Is this where we're
Yes.
asking that?
Yes, that
Yes.
could for
Yeah.
sure be a good example. So my only request is that as a part of the survey mechanism to get the feedback, we have to have a definition around each one of the
Sure.
priority items so that folks understand what site size means if that's a criteria. And so the only potential issue I see with coming up with that list on the 30th, it really puts a strain on getting it out on the 1st unless all those definitions come along with the priorities. So if you can do that at the same time, then we can do the typing on the 1st, if you will. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Does it have to go out on the 1st? What if it goes out on the 3rd? What if it?
Because we are running out of time. We have the meeting on the 14th. If we want to run things up till the last minute, so we have between the 14th and the 21st. So yeah, if we have to push it, yes, but I want to get it, we want to get it done well, but we want to get it done sooner than later.
It would mean one less day open to the community for the survey, in essence.
I would trade one day to get it right.
Yeah, I feel like we're always rushing.
So that is one of the things. A couple of other things about the EFMP were the land. The land is about from the feedback was built outside. So the land is we have the one across from Elementary South next to the thing. Nick is going to talk to the park district and see what that land is going for. Is it can we do it independently of the kindergarten building itself, just take the land and not the kindergarten building? So we're going to try to get some answers on that one. The second land was on Butterfield, so we're going to find out what the exact pricing on that is running at right now, because we had looked at the pricing before, but we never pursued it, so we're going to look at that. One of the options was adaptive reuse, and Jason has is going to look along with his team to go and look at some adaptive reuses in the next week or so.
Fast as we can.
as fast as he can. He would like maybe a board member or two to go with him to kind of vet it out. It has to be on his timetable. No timings are going to get changed. So if you can commit in the next 10 days, you can sign up.
Well, I can commit,
I'll go.
not knowing the exact time.
Right.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying is like you can, but you will have to make sure that you can adjust to his time. Like,
Well, then why don't a few of us volunteer? So there can always be one.
but all three of, they can be more than two people.
I
Well,
know,
I
you don't
know,
have to
but
be
at least
exact.
if we all
But we can
commit,
agree.
we have
Right.
one person going.
Yeah, so like
Because
if
if he
Robin and
says
Wes
it's
say
May
they're gonna
7th
do
and I
it.
say I can't go May 7th, but she can, or Jason
Right.
can, you know.
I mean,
why
I'd be
don't a
willing
few
to
of
throw
us
my hat in if I'm
volunteer?
free. I mean,
We're the ones here during the day.
You want to give us, do you want to send us a time?
Well, what could happen, I'm sorry to interrupt, so when Jason could send me and say, here are 3 days and 3 times location, I can send that out to the board and say, I need to know who can make it. And if it's 1 or 2, we're good to go. If it's 3, then I will have to send out and say, somebody's got to back away. And
Right.
so we could do it that way.
That's fine.
And what you might want to watch is watch for text. You might send a text to board members and say, an email's been sent. Because I know sometimes you see this, but an email's been sent.
Yeah.
I need a response. And
that's
then you
great.
know it.
That's fine.
So we can do
Okay.
it that way.
yep.
So for that after reviews, I have people, if you can get me the priority list to me and Nick, and then we'll narrow it down, figure it out.
Nick, can we touch base tomorrow on
Yeah.
that?
Do we, are we allowed to, or is it just a bad idea to consider looking at adaptive reuse where we're not 100% sure of when it's going to become available, but like, okay, so now we know Carson's Furniture Store is going to become available. Now we know, I believe Walmart's going to become available. Aren't they moving them online? So Walmart's going to become available.
They've
but we
been
don't
moving
know-
for a few years.
No, I think it's actually finally approved.
Yeah, they've got it.
So like we know, not that I necessarily think a strip mall is a fabulous place for a school, but like maybe we need to consider certain things. So, are we allowed to really only look at things that are absolutely available right now that we know for sure are?
Well, it's about connections and being able to get in to see the property. I mean, if it's a store, if
Well,
it's
we
a
can just
public
walk
store, we
in,
can just
but I
walk
mean,
in,
like-
right? But we would be.
This has got to go.
That couch is hideous.
We'd be making
Flexible
some,
seating.
making some guesstimate about when that would occur and how much it would cost. That that would be it.
Or if it may not even be available. I mean, if somebody purchases their assets and decide, right.
Then right.
So I just didn't know
Lots of
how
unknowns
advisable
in
it
that
is to
regard.
look at those, but I also don't want to overlook things that might be.
Well, and I think
good
we also
space.
have to contemplate purchase versus lease.
Yes.
That's a nuance that is important when it comes to any referendum question. So that's something to contemplate.
I
And
mean,
so
do we
there,
even want to consider lease? I mean, is that even something? I
If we
said-
have to consider lease, some of those just
Most
aren't
of the
even available
adaptive
for
reuses
purchase.
were
They're
lease
mostly
only.
Well, at that time.
Yeah, but
They're
what fit our
fine.
site plan, so it has to fit the site plan. That was-
general, we're looking for volume,
Right.
height, is important. If you recall from the original master plan study, we looked at warehouse space because we could facilitate a second floor in there.
Right.
And so that was key in making more fit in the footprint that existed. I'm willing to do an exploration with, and I'm appreciative that you are willing to explore along with us, but we'll find lots of answers and probably some new questions.
Yay.
Right, I have a question, Jason. When you say that the independent professionals are going to weight the priorities, are those consultants or those independent professionals at DLR that just aren't on this project?
Yes. Those are, and I'm sorry, that was not an answer. Well, it was, but they're independent professionals at DLR Group. So I typically do this with multiple offices who don't have any connection to the project. So I'll send it to Omaha, Nebraska, and I'll send another one to Orlando, Florida. And we'll provide the same definitions we provide to the community. We'll provide the detailed maps of what they need to know, and they'll ask us questions, but we won't insert any bias into the answers. It will just be, this is what it is, or this is what it isn't.
And then, Sonali, you mentioned that when you talking about the park district, about taking the land and not the kindergarten center.
Yeah, if that is one of the plans that does happen. if we do decide to go that way, we need to know that they will let us separate it.
So we don't do, are you saying not do the kindergarten center? And then
Yeah,
do
if that
LA?
is a plan, if there's a plan that says just build a new building,
No kindergarten.
but it would be no kindergarten
Okay,
center.
so if the park district would still sell us the land.
That's what we need to
if
know.
we didn't move forward with the kindergarten center.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's-
I just wanted to be clear. Thank you.
Just in that respect. But we need to make sure we get an answer from them regards that they'll let us do that if we decide, if we have that option. So a lot of these options will come into play on the 30th. It is going to be a long meeting. Come prepared.
Can I ask you a question about sort of the protocol of going through these ideas on the 30th?
Yeah.
So everybody who submitted an idea got a response from you, which
Yes.
thank you for drafting those because Lord knows that's not an easy job. But is what you said in your responses really sort of end all be all, or are these still going to be up for discussion even if they've sort of already been,
Out of those, like a grade center is not up for discussion, or
Why?
moving kids to high school is not up for
Well, that's
discussion.
obviously not for discussion. Yes.
But the 5
But
through
why,
8,
Why is like grade centers not up for discussion?
because that is not an educationally viable option, as well as right sizing the schools is not. It is, we'll have to right size all the schools again.
Well, of course, but
But-
I mean, I don't know if it's not educationally viable. I mean, there's districts that do it, so it may not be necessarily considered best practice, but without knowing the reasons why it's not and how those apply to our district, I don't know that it's not something we should vet out. I mean, I don't know that adjusting the size of
We
those
can vet it.
buildings is any different than adding on to the size of our current buildings.
We can vet it. I mean, it just comes down to,
I just think it deserves discussion. I mean, it's been brought up numerous times
it's
in the community.
it's a
I think it
big
deserves
puzzle
a
piece.
discussion.
Can you fit 450 kids, one grade roughly, into a 450 building? Yes. You fit that into a 600 building, now you've got excess.
Right.
Or do you add to that so that you now have 952 classrooms, 2 grades?
Yeah.
So yeah,
No,
you can vet that
I
and
appreciate that,
do all
but I
that.
think the community deserves the transparency of that discussion being held in public, because otherwise only the person who sent that in gets the privilege of the response when it's been brought up numerous times. I continue to hear it brought up almost on a daily basis. And when I was sitting on the reorg committee, now it was probably like, what, 2013 maybe, 2012?
Years.
Like, I was on the group assigned to vet the grade level centers. I know that right now it doesn't exist the way the buildings stand right now. But the question is, if we're looking at adding on and stuff like that, is that something we should consider? And what are the pros and cons of having grade level centers from an educational standpoint, an operating expense standpoint? Like, and it may not be a viable option. I just think it deserves a conversation. So I'm just wondering, like,
So in
do
general,
your
just
email responses just
summarize your responses to all the different options that you've already responded to in that public forum so that
yeah, but I don't know that there
everyone
was
gets
even
the answer.
consensus for those responses. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of these I think deserve to have the pros and cons weighed, even if obviously I could poke holes in anybody's idea. I mean, that's not everybody's going to, any plan that's put forward, whether we come up with it or Jason comes up with it or the community comes up with it, is going to have drawbacks to it. So I think it's a matter of balancing what are the drawbacks versus what are the positive attributes, what purpose is it really going to serve and for how long. I think that deserves to be vetted out, even though, yeah, there's been responses already given that have said, here's why that's not going to work, ABC. And some things truly aren't going to work, and I don't think it takes too long to discuss. I mean, there's no way we would get 120, 128, 125 to all agree to take our 8th graders. Like, that's not happening. So, but there's certain ones that I think are probably worth a conversation, even if the conversation was had by the core team, because none of us sat on the core team. I mean,
And
sometimes
whichever options you chose to vet, we could put through the model, see how it came out.
and we may not come up with something massively different than what was already come up with, but there's a very distinct possibility of that. But I think it deserves to be held in a public conversation.
We were going to hold it. I did say we were going to elaborate on some of them.
I've said my piece. I don't know if anybody feels similarly to me, but
As
Maybe-
the
I'm not gonna repeat
priorities are contemplated, think about things like longevity as well. You know, if that's an attribute that we can define, then we can measure it.
I mean, did anybody else?
No,
feel
I was just
similarly?
so Sonali, you said you just said that we were going to, but then before you said that grade level centers weren't up for discussion. So how is
According
that
to
the
me,
same?
the grade level centers, from what I've read as the research, from what the amount of puzzling pieces and the core team's work was done, because they did look at it at core centers. And I'm not talking about my personal, I'm looking at the core teams and their vetting process, because there is the work that is done to spend all the time doing it again to get the same answer, because it was done by the core team. This is not, none of these answers are like my answers kind of thing. This
I would
is
get
work
that.
that came from, the 700-page document that got sent.
Totally get that.
So that is why that answer was put. I have not put in any answer that is my opinion on any of those. This was an answer that came vetted from the core team, from the DLR. So from that, those grade centers was vetted. It wasn't possible to do it. That's why it was one of the options not looked at when we were looking for space constraints, and space needs to be done. So that's why it was vetted and said, let's not do it. Along with the fact that it is not an educational practice anymore, for what it hasn't been since the 90s. So I don't know if going forward that would help us, but if it is something that we want to vet, then somebody
I
needs.
think what Robin is saying, just spend 5 minutes explaining that. Just saying exactly what you just said in the open meeting, saying this is why this option, we did look at it, and here are the reasons why. These are the answers that you've given to other people who have proposed it. And we can take 5 minutes and say, yep, you're right. It just, the puzzles don't fit. It doesn't do this. Or someone else can say, well, you know what, maybe it does work.
But
Take
as a
5
board,
minutes.
do we even,
Yeah, to take the 5
as a
minutes
board,
for
do
us
we
to.
even think that it is worth vetting?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I just wanted to know to what extent the responses you gave via email are the end all be all of the discussion, because we didn't get to contribute to any of those responses. And I understand a lot of it's the core team and it's not necessarily your personal opinion. And I appreciate that, but even the core team's work was already 2 years ago. Have things, not only have things changed in price, but other challenges have popped up from, things that have gone on with the kindergarten center. I think it's probably worth at least having a short discussion, if possible, for consensus to even go look harder at some of these things. If 4 out of the 7 of us at least say, what grade level centers are going to be really not the best option for X, Y, and Z reasons, great. But I worked on the grade level center project, and I still don't know what the reason why educationally grade level centers are not recommended. That was still never explained to me. So how is the rest of the community supposed to understand that? So 103 does it, and I don't think anybody would sit here and say we don't want to attain the same level of achievement they do. They're a good district. So it may not be best practice, so to speak, but doesn't mean it's not going on successfully in some places. So I just wanted to know to what level we can really get into this, or is it just going to be a matter of reading your emails out loud as to that won't work because of this, 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 or this.
And there were some things in some of those emails that I saw as being a challenge, but I didn't see as being a deal breaker that weren't worth going back and looking at. So
We can vet them.
They're all going to have challenges. We're not going to find a plan without challenges.
Anything else for Jason?
No, thank you.
Thanks, Jason.
Thank you.
Available
See you
at
on the
8
30th.
a.m.
Yes, I'll make myself available.
Because I have my other 2 experts with me at 8 a.m. at the same time. So
Okay, great.
I'll call you because I have Abe and Michael with me. Thank
So
you.
Sonali,
Yeah.
one of the things that was on our to-do list is the criteria list. Who's doing that? The administration and you? How are we coming up with that list by the 30th? What's our next step?
If you send what your priorities and the
Criteria.
criteria and the definition of the criteria is to us, we can combine it to, I and Nick will combine it to get it, like, if there was a if size site is something that's going to be on all 7 of ours, I could combine it to make it one size site and definition that fits the best from, if Robin came up with the best definition, I'll take her definition into, that size site
So
thing.
we feed everything to you,
Yes.
and then you guys will collate. you
We'll
and Nick
collate
will
and give it
collate.
and come up with that on the 30th again. Does that work?
Homework.
Robin, anything?
I mean, I would have to sit and think about those.
No, I'm saying, I thought you were saying something. That's why I said like.
That process.
Oh, no, sorry.
That process works.
Next is the lovely policy and press packets. So let's do the policy, which is the policy 7:30, which is the attendance areas, student assignments, and intra-district transfers, which was discussed. It was sent to you in the mail, as well as there's a copy of it on your desk, in your folder, sorry. So if you look at it at the recommended language change, Jason had some language change.
Yeah, not on the addition, but on was already in there. Since we're changing 7:30 anyways, I suggest we remove the grandfathering clause that no longer apply. That's
Yes.
the paragraph 2 under attendance area assignment, and the last sentence on paragraph 3 under attendance area assignment. We can just strike all that because they no longer apply.
What about the siblings that were grandfathered? Middle.
Vitamins? No, because their siblings would have been out by now.
I don't know about that.
Well, I mean, if
There was
you're-
that one neighborhood that got reboundaried from north to south for middle school. So if they went as a sibling, well, no, I guess you're right. Because this incoming
have to
sixth
be-
grade class is the
yeah.
last class. Okay, yeah, you're right.
By now, they would have been out.
Right.
We taking that sentence out too?
Sure.
We taking the first 2 sentences out on paragraph 2, which says, students in grades 2, 3, 4, 6, and 7 during the 2014-15 school year are grandfathered and may continue to attend their current schools, or they may choose to attend the school assigned to their attendance area if space allows. Siblings of grandfathered students may attend the same school as their grandfathered siblings, or they may choose to attend the school assigned to their attendance area.
It's that second sentence I just don't think we can take out.
The siblings of grandfather students.
Right.
Siblings
If you
of,
take that sentence out, for instance, my daughter has to move from Town Line to Elementary North next year, whether I want her to or not.
siblings of grandfathered students may attend the same school as their grandfathered siblings, or they may choose to attend.
You're right.
So it's just the first sentence.
Or leave
Well,
it
you can
until
take out the first sentence.
Yeah, that's why.
You lose the context a little bit of what
Of
the
the grandfather, yeah.
grandfathered
So
students
just-
were,
So
but
just leave that in there.
just
then.
leave it until completely.
2026.
we should be
Yeah.
almost completely
We're almost through.
done with it.
Right, we have 2 more years until the siblings.
Do we know how many grandfathered siblings are in the current kindergarten class?
I'd have to go back and check.
Can't be many at
No,
this point.
not many.
Okay, never
And
mind.
so we're going to leave that, and the topic that was, and the stuff that was
Sorry.
added was staff of Hawthorne District 73 that live within the attendance boundary for Hawthorne District 73 may request a transfer of their child from the boundary school as outlined within this policy to attend the school in which the staff member works. This request may be made for convenience or educational reasons. The staff member will be responsible for transportation. Requests shall be directed to the superintendent, who, at his or her sole discretion, may grant the request when space is available at the school to which transfer is sought. That is the paragraph that is added for transfers within the district.
I didn't add any language in there for, we talked about a conversation with staff members, just make sure your confidentiality and boundaries. That'll be an administrative procedure that I would create, and just ask the principals to have a conversation with their staff.
Are we good with that?
Are educational reasons assuming that part of that is like emotional reasons,
Yeah, it could be.
not just academic?
Really on there, the thing that holds folks up is that they can make it for educational or social emotional, something that's impacting.
Right.
It's the fact that it's a lot looser request for them. It can be
Sure.
for convenience, or I just think it's going to be a better situation.
Okay. That's fine.
All of you had received an email. The next one is the press policy 97. And you guys had received the email from Nick, from the which was essentially forwarded from the attorneys about regarding the provisions in the policy of this session.
I'm sorry that came late. I sent it to you as soon as I got it.
So in that it addresses, it was policy 2:260, which was, sorry, let me find my notes. It was the uniform grievance procedure. It included the phrase by state or federal constitution or statute for board policy. It broadens the scope of the policy. It addresses the website accessibility. So it is, they've sent in their recommendation. Everybody has it. The next one is policy 5:20. It incorporates information regarding sexual harassment as required by public act. And it is, so they've included all the sentences that they think. The next one is policy 440, which includes obligations for continuing disclosures under federal law. This is for including the section under bond issuing obligations. This is recommended by the IRS, so we were going to do that. And it's recommended by our attorneys. And they wanted us to add, along with the superintendent, they wanted us to add the director of finance and business operations or other designee shall prepare our documents. And I think in the policy that was sent to us, it only said the superintendent, so I think they had us add Abe. And adopting the administrative procedures for policy 4:40. And then the board had a question regarding if the complaint was against the complaint manager, then they asked us that we could add a sentence saying that the individual may bring the complaint to the other complaint manager, because we have to have two, one of each sex. That is a requirement of the policy. They can bring the complaint to the other complaint manager or to the superintendent. So that is something they said we could add that language. Does anybody have any other questions for regarding the policies? No? Okay. So we're good with that. Next, the summer work review. Mike?
Yes. Okay, summer projects 2018. This is an action item for tonight for approval. In summary, it includes a number of projects such as paving, lighting, replacing a boiler, replacing a hot water heater, and other safety type projects. The total estimate of those projects with a 10% contingency would be for a budget of $300,080. And so, again, this is per the presentation that was provided at the April 9th board meeting. It is our recommendation that the board approve the projects as outlined in the working capital plan for that budget of $300,080. Are there any questions?
Does anybody have any questions for Abe? Jeff? No, I just heard him sometime back.
No
For dramatic effect, pause.
Anybody else? No? No questions? Thank you, Abe. The next is the paper bid for 2018-19.
Yes, this is for discussion tonight for possible approval at the next board meeting. 8 companies received the annual paper bid documents. 5 companies submitted a bid. It would be our recommendation that the Board of Education approve Midland Paper to provide the year supply of paper to our district for a total cost of $56,583.60.
This is for 2,440 cases, but it does include Oak Grove. Our total for this district is 2,160 cases, or enough for 10.8 million copies for the district. We do use currently the majority of it. The paper cost is up. We were talking about inflation. Paper went up 8.1% on a per case basis. It was $21.45 a case last year. This year, it's $23.19. The technology department is going to look at a paper cut software solution. We need to first be able to measure where usage is and what the patterns are. It would be a system where you would use your ID to scan in to release print jobs or to make copies. So that is a solution that the technology department will be exploring for next year. And one where with that we'd be able to perhaps set limits as to how much one can print and copy. So with that, are there any questions?
Did the 1-to-1, did that cut down on any paper use?
Yeah, we have been as high as 14. Hopefully getting it cut down, but.
My middle schooler brings home almost no paper.
It's really, well, actually, if you look in his locker, no.
Well,
yeah,
that's,
no, but they really have
no,
tried
but
to cut back.
seriously, like it's hardly, it's not even half of what.
Okay.
Next item, prevailing wage 2018-19.
So the Prevailing Wage Act is one where public entities, which includes school districts, must comply with. It's for discussion tonight, approval at the next board meeting. But it is a recommendation that we comply with the law, which is the Prevailing Wage Act. In essence.
Thanks, Dave. I agree. Aye.
So it's fairly procedural. Are there any questions related to that?
No, thank you.
Yep.
We're good.
Thank you.
It's nice he wants to keep us legal.
Yeah.
Next, especially you. Resolution for transfer of funds to the working capital funds.
Yes. So this is, for the most part, accounting ledger book cleanup. The incremental expenses have or will be approved by the board. The transfers will be done sequentially as needed up to the requested dollar amount. It includes the summer projects from the 2017-18 school year.
That's the last
from
year.
last summer, correct?
Okay.
So it's those projects. That total is $505,000, including offsetting the negative balance in the capital project fund of approximately $125,000. That gets us to the $630,000 in addition to a possible $12 million for a construction project. So again, we're not requesting approval of expending the funds, rather transferring as needed to keep the capital project fund in the positive versus the deficit.
Any questions, Jeff?
So this is for discussion tonight, not approval. That would be at the next board meeting.
Jason? No. I had a question. If we don't use the 12 million right now or later or whatever, or we use only part of it, how does that affect this transfer of funds?
We would only transfer over the costs that would be expended, so that would include all architectural engineering costs. About $950,000 to date would be transferred to meet those costs. But if we're not going to build it, then we're simply not going to transfer the funds to expend it. It would remain in working cash.
Okay, so considering we won't have an answer towards, a resolution towards, whether we are going to expend that 12 million or not towards building. So till what time do we have to do the resolution? What is the time frame for the transfer of funds? Because would we just want to transfer the 1.6 because 630 here and then 1 million that we need to do for, as you said, for architectural fees and stuff, and then wait on the other till we figure it out, or
so the resolution,
how does that work?
right? So as the resolution stated, it allows for transfers on an ongoing basis as needed up to that dollar amount.
Okay.
And it does have a sundown through the 2018-19 fiscal year. So we do
Okay.
have next year as well to transfer these funds. So we do have some time to do that.
Okay.
If we go beyond that, then we could just simply create another resolution, change the date.
Okay. And we will only transfer as needed, right? So if we don't need the money, it does sit in our working.
That is correct.
Okay. Any questions? Okay. Next item, position, posting of curriculum position. So this is because someone is leaving. So we have to figure out what we want to do about that.
Yeah, so since we have an opening, looking at posting the position, need to get it posted up. Have met with the administrative team, kind of go through some of our priorities, our needs. What do we see for the position going forward? You always, there's an opening, you always revisit. Where are we at? Where do we need to go? Have spoken to union leadership, also kind of get some ideas from them. Did a little research. Somebody had asked some questions about kind of what do other districts have, what do they look like, and so Lynn was kind enough to do some research for us. We are the second largest elementary district in Lake County. I think Round Lake is a K-12. It's a little bigger, but Round Lake, Woodland is a little bit larger than us. But what we have found in looking at these, Round Lake, Woodland, Wakanda, North Shore, Grays Lake, North Chicago. That gives you a range, starting with Round Lake was at 7,100, that's a K-12. Woodland at 5,700, Wakanda at 4,700. You know, our enrollment, North Shore is around 4,000, Grace Lake's around 3,800, North Shore 35. Within that range, they all have a curriculum, like an assistant superintendent or somebody in Lisa's role, and they also have an additional curriculum position, a coordinator of teaching and learning or a director of teaching and learning, somebody that does something. It's hard to time. Ours is specifically identified as professional development, so it's hard to define these. Sometimes they're doing those roles, but there are two folks within the curriculum department doing the curriculum work and professional development and mentoring. Killdeer, 3,200 students, 2 positions in that department. Deerfield actually has 3, and they're 2,900. Antioch has 2. So as far as we can tell going through those, until you get down into the 2,700 or less, as far as we could see, folks had sort of the equivalent 2 types of positions. Now, the roles they play or how their titles are may seem different, but embedded within that work is some PD, mentoring of new teachers, coaching, the curriculum work, instruction work, the assessment work all kind of goes in there. So I know there was a question, kind of how do we compare with some other districts? We do need to post it. Like I said, I had a meeting last week with some folks, and this week we do want to post it, the opening. Lynn and I have discussed and looked at, should we use a search firm like we did in Abe's position? We think that we can save those dollars. We think we can post it and advertise it enough to get a good pool of candidates internally and externally that might be interested in coming to work with us in that role, and move forward with trying to fill that and find kind of where we're at and what we need. Didn't know if there are any other specific questions or ideas, trying to give some ideas.
Send us any proposed language for the posting, or that's not
No.
job to...
Yeah, no, normally I didn't. I haven't posted it yet, because I wanted to have some.
So I'm a little bit confused. Are you suggesting we post for 2 people because other districts have?
No.
Right.
I have.
We already have Karen for PD mentorship.
Right. Yeah. I'm looking at posting to replace Lisa's position. It'd be posted as a director or assistant soup, depending on the qualifications of the person. Karen's position would stay. There were some questions. People said, should we try to
saying we're not posting for 2
right? No, we
people.
have what
I'm not
we have.
okay with that.
No.
Okay.
We have 2 positions, and it looks as though that's equivalent in districts around our size around here. We would post for Lisa's position and then see what candidates we get into and go through the interview process with that.
Okay, and when we post, do we post with attached dollar amount, or do we negotiate based upon who we find, experience, what they demand?
We love to use the phrase regionally competitive.
I knew there had to be a
Yeah,
buzzword.
there's a phrase. And then looking at the credentials of the person and the experience they bring, then what I would do is send a report to the board and say, we think we have a candidate. Here's what we were paying. Here's a range. You've seen some of we've shared some ranges with you, but we wouldn't put a specific dollar amount. We'd say regionally competitive and go from there because it can fluctuate depending on
Right. And who's on the hiring?
Still,
Besides you.
yeah, right. Lynn, still working through that. I would expect to have some administrators involved in that from the building level, and I anticipate having a couple of teachers involved in that as well, going through. But I haven't finalized sort of the whole process on that. But usually we go through 2 or 3 rounds of interviews. One is a screening pool. You get large. Let's say we get 13 folks that we think are interested. Narrow it down to maybe 6. Those 6 go to a group, and they narrow it down to 3, and then it comes back to another group, including myself at that time, to say if these are the finalists, and try to get some. When we have a rubric of what we're looking for, and what folks have identified they think are priorities. So.
Okay, so that was going to be my question. So you do have a list of priorities and what you are going to be looking for when potential candidates submit their resumes.
So you said director or assistant superintendent.
Right.
If it's based on the qualification, if it's a director, then what does the district have for an assistant superintendent? Or what would your plan be for an assistant superintendent if it comes into as a director?
I would look at existing central administration staff and see if there's somebody there I think can step up and do that. We have great folks. Anybody can.
So you'd still fill that role somehow?
Potentially. I don't want to guarantee. Potentially, I would. Part of this is when you ask for somebody to be an assistant superintendent, there are some additional duties and expectations. My current assistant superintendent was very interested in learning the role of a superintendent as well, so there were a lot of opportunities there. So I'm going to adjust that depending on who might be an assistant and say these are the definite requirements that we need for a district. But I took a while to make a recommendation when I came to make sure who I had and what I thought were qualifications. But I would always have a designee, and if I were to leave, there's always a designee, and there's a chain of command for those pieces.
Any other questions? Jeff?
Well, I think you should decide whether you want to hire a director or an assistant superintendent, and then just go ahead and do that. I don't think you should wait waffle between the two, depending on whether you have internal candidate or whatever. Just decide whether the district needs a director with the experience that person would bring, or if you need a assistant superintendent to handle other duties and want to look for somebody more experienced.
Okay, I'll think about that. Thank you.
For board member?
Usually not in administrative roles on that.
Anything else? Okay, so next we move on to the consent agenda. I had a quick question. There's a change in one of the minutes that we want to make, but it's a closed session language. So how do we do that kind of?
Yeah, on the closed.
I know the procedural.
Yeah, on the closed session minutes, there was a item in there talking about negotiations and the term agreement, and it really should say tentative agreement on some items because it's not been finalized. So I think we would handwrite in the word tentative into that section.
Okay, so I can just handwrite it in? Okay, so when we say when we say it's the closed session minutes, actually there are 2 minutes for that. It's a pre-meeting minutes, and then there's a post-meeting minutes, and this thing is the changes on the pre-meeting minutes. That's the changes there. So we'll say it that way. So anybody have any other questions on the consent agenda? Okay, so we have this special board meeting minutes from April 5th. We have the board minutes from April 9th. We have the closed session minutes from April 9th, the pre-meeting minutes and the post-meeting minutes. So there are 2 of them. Then we have the special board meeting minutes from the April 17th. We have press 97. We have the Amex report for March, expenditure report from April, the kindergarten project cost log, and we have the personnel report. Do I have a motion?
In the pre-meeting minutes with the noted change of
Yeah.
tentative included.
Change of word tentative, which I will write it in. Do I have a motion?
Move that the Board of Education approve the consent agenda items as amended.
Second.
Motion by Robin, seconded by Jason. Could I have a roll call vote, please?
Jason Tron.
Aye.
Julie Simpson.
Aye.
Jeff Bard.
Aye.
Robin Cleek.
Aye.
Wes Pullen, aye. Matt Jacobs.
Aye.
Sonali Patel.
Aye. Motion passes 7 ayes, 0 nays. Next is the action item for 2018 summer work expenditure. Any discussions? Could I have a motion, please?
I move that the Board of Education approve the 2018 summer projects as outlined in the working capital plan for a total budget of $300,080.
I second.
Motion by Robin, seconded by Wes. Could I have a roll call vote, please?
Jason Tron.
Aye.
Julie Simpson.
Aye.
Jeff Bard.
Aye.
Robin Cleek.
Aye.
Wes Pullen, aye. Matt Jacobs.
Aye.
Sonali Patel.
Aye. Motion passes 7 ayes, 0 nays. The next is the policy 730, which is the attendance area, student assignments, and intra-district transfer. Any discussions?
Did we need to make something in the policy regarding dual language? Because it's pretty silent, right?
What does that mean? What did you
Like,
say?
We don't
I think he doesn't
discuss
want
dual
them-
language anywhere in our board policy.
In terms of attendance area?
Yeah.
So do you mean like a teacher
I'm
wouldn't
not
be able to
saying
just
to
ask?
do it here, but I'm just asking whether we need a policy somewhere about dual language and the process for getting into dual language, and if someone in dual language wants to go to a different school somewhere along the way, do we have a policy anywhere that covers that?
I'll have to do a little checking, and I can also ask other districts with dual language programs to see if they have something specific. But that would be,
recall any.
that'd be a different one than this particular policy for approval right now, but I will look.
Okay.
Do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Education approve the revision to policy 7:70 attendance areas, student assignments, and inter-district transfer as proposed.
It should say 7:30.
Oh, 7:30.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We
okay.
do the motion.
Oh,
I move that we amend the motion.
It hasn't been a second yet. You don't need to amend.
I
it.
know, I'm just kidding.
Okay.
And the motion?
Yeah.
No. He doesn't have to amend it. Just makes a new motion. You can say motion failed because there was no second.
Okay.
Okay. So it's a new-
Then you can make another motion.
Can I have a new motion with the right numbers?
I move that the Board of Education approve the revision to policy 7:30 attendance areas, student assignments, and inter-district transfer policy as amended, or is it just
As proposed.
As proposed.
Okay, proposed.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Wes, seconded by Julie. Could I have a roll call vote, please?
Sonali Patel.
Aye.
Matt Jacobs.
Aye.
Wes Pullen, aye. Robin Cleek.
Aye.
Jeff Bard.
No.
Julie Simpson.
Aye.
Jason Tron.
Aye.
Motion passes 6 ayes, 1 nay. President's report. Did anybody give any thought to the IASB resolution? Anybody think anything they wanted resolved or changed or to put any resolutions on the packet? Yeah. Okay. Uh, what else? There's a lot of community open houses coming up starting from the 24th. Robin and Matt are attending a few of them. If you are open and could attend one of them or two of them, based on how your timing goes, please let me know, and so we can be there. We have the next community engagement meeting in Middle School North. We will discuss the plans and go from there. That's it.
All right, some highlights for everybody on April 18th. The following students were recognized at a breakfast held at the Vernon Hills High School. At Elementary North, 5th grade student Ashley G. and Abdullah K. Elementary South, 5th grade students Kate P. and Clayton S. Middle School North, 8th grade students Brooke B. and Sophia G. Middle School South, 8th grade students Isabella P. and Mary D. NEST program, our early intervention screening event, Wednesday, April 25th at the Aspen Drive Library, 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. Thank you to Leslie for creating the flyer. Also, thank you to the volunteers who helped to interview and administer the ASQ3. Dr. Karen Mature, Jessica Flores, Jamie DiCarlo, Kim Lazare, Raquel Almora, Megan Wolf, Millie Naughton, and Tara Makata. Some activities, the 24th, we have an Elementary South K2 open house at 7. On the 24th, also at Elementary North, open house for grades K, 2, and 4 at 6:30. On 4/26, we have Elementary South 3 through 5 open house at 7. And on 4/26, we have Elementary North's grades 1, 3, and 5 at 6:30. On 4/27 and 4/28, middle school play, middle school multipurpose room at 7 p.m. On May 5th, Aspen open house, music program, grades K through 2 at 6:30. May 3rd, Aspen Open House Music Program, grades 1, 3, and 5 at 6:30. May 4th, Middle School North, 8th grade, dance, Middle School North Gym, 6 to 8 p.m. On May 8th, Dual Language Open House, grades K through 5, 6:30 to 8. On May 9th, Town Line Open House, grades K through 5, 6:30 to 8. On May 10th is an early release day. May 11th is Cultural Night, hosted by the School of Dual Language from 5:30 to 7:30. May 11th and 12th is Middle School North's musical, in the Middle School North's gym at 7 p.m. And on May 11th, Middle School South's 8th grade dance in the Middle School gym, 6 to 8 p.m. And it's impossible to think we're already talking about May. I don't know what happened to April with all that, but thank you very much to everybody that helps make all those events work for our students.
That's it.
Motion to adjourn.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Topics for future discussion?
Yeah, topics for future discussion, sorry.
So it's not really, well, it's kind of a topic for future discussion. I thought we were going to talk about the options that we were presented, if we wanted to start putting the board packet online.
What?
Increasing transparency with making available board packet. Didn't we
Yeah,
get two options?
Yeah, we're still working on it, remember?
Yeah, there's
Still
actually a
in
third one
process,
now
just-
that's appeared. So we haven't forgotten that, but it's going to come back to you.
Okay, that's all.
Anything else?
I have two.
Yeah.
One, I think we need to take a look at our website. And making it a little bit more user friendly. Maybe getting some community opinions on what's going on, but I think we need to, improve it and definitely have an area where our community can go for the facts moving forward for the referendum. I know everything's on there now, but it's not easy to find. And that's been a challenge. And then the second thing is our meeting technology. It's kind of embarrassing when before every meeting we have to make adjustments. And, I understand things come up, but it seems to be it's every meeting now.
Which, a community meeting or this meeting or?
Well, both.
Consensus about those or no?
can put them, I'll talk with our tech department and see what some of those issues are, send out some notes to you and kind of go from there. And then on the webpage, might send out an email to board members. You could send individually, kind of what would your goals want to be for the webpage? And this, that can give us some direction on.
But I do want to say, also, I had made a mention, I mentioned to Abe a few months ago, about it was difficult. You had to scroll all the way down to the bottom of the page to get the link to pay online. It's been moved up. So thanks, Abe. So that, yeah. I had to go make a payment, so I, much easier. Thank you.
Make it easy.
And stay
We
legal.
need a donate here button.
That'll be good. That's a good idea. Do you have a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Oh wait, no, we have to move to go into closed
Yeah, that's what I
meeting?
thought.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Are we?
Are we
not?
going to close meeting? No.
It's there if needed. I didn't have anything new.
sorry,
I'm
sorry,
sorry.
sorry.
Second?
Yeah. Thank you.
Motion by Robin, seconded by Julie. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7 ayes, 0 nays. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
No, I thought we had closed session. I wasn't sure.
Yeah, I thought it was.
You should like send us an update before.